December 22nd, 1944. The Supreme Allied Commander is told that an entire American army, 90,000 men, their vehicles, their guns, everything, will pivot 90 degrees north and march through a blizzard to relieve a surrounded town. In 48 hours. Impossible, his staff says. The roads don't exist. The Germans control all the approaches. It cannot be done, but George Patton says otherwise. Today, we're revealing what Dwight Eisenhower actually said when Patton delivered on the most audacious promise of World War II. December 16th, 1944. The German Wehrmacht launches Operation Wacht am Rhein. What history will remember as the Battle of the Bulge. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, 3 German armies crash through American lines with a ferocity not seen since 1940. Hitler's plan is desperate but brilliant. Split the Allied armies, capture the vital port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace in the West before the Soviets reach Berlin. Within 72 hours, the situation becomes catastrophic. The 101st Airborne Division and elements of the 10th Armored Division, roughly 18,000 American soldiers, find themselves completely surrounded in the Belgian town of Bastogne. The town sits at the convergence of 7 critical roads. Whoever controls Bastogne controls movement through the Ardennes. The Germans need it. The Americans must hold it. But holding isn't enough. These men need relief. They need ammunition. They need reinforcements. They need a miracle. Supreme Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower calls an emergency meeting at his headquarters in Verdun, France, on December 19th. The room is unheated. The mood is grim. His senior commanders gather around a table covered in maps showing the German penetration, a bulge driven 50 miles deep into Allied lines. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery is pessimistic. General Omar Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, is cautious. The situation appears hopeless. Then Eisenhower turns to Lieutenant General George S. Sound, commander of the 3rd Army, currently engaged 100 miles to the south in a completely different offensive. The question is simple. How soon can you disengage from your current operation, wheel your entire army northward, and attack into the German flank to relieve Bastogne? Every man in the room knows this is nearly impossible. An army doesn't simply turn on its axis like a company of infantry. You have 3 corps, multiple divisions, hundreds of thousands of men spread across a 100-mile front, actively fighting. You have supply lines running in one direction. You have artillery positioned for a southern advance. You have communication networks oriented toward current operations. The silence that follows Patton's declaration lasts several seconds. Some of the officers in the room believe he's joking. Others think he's lost his mind. One does not simply rotate 90,000 men and thousands of vehicles through winter roads that barely exist. Through territory, the enemy can observe and strike while maintaining combat readiness. Military doctrine of the era suggests such a maneuver would require at least 6 days of careful planning and another week of execution. You would need to disengage from current fighting, pull units back in sequence, reorganize them, redirect supply columns, issue new orders to every battalion and company, coordinate with air support, establish new communication lines, and move through a transportation network already choked with refugees and retreating units. Montgomery voices what others are thinking. It cannot be done in 48 hours, perhaps in a week, if conditions are ideal, perhaps in 10 days, if the weather cooperates. Bradley is silent, but skeptical. The staff officers exchange glances, that telegraph their doubts. But what they didn't know was that Patton had already begun planning. While other commanders saw the German offensive as a crisis, Patton saw it as an opportunity. 3 days earlier, before Eisenhower's meeting was even scheduled, Patton had instructed his staff to prepare 3 separate contingency plans for Wheeling North. Each plan involved different portions of his Third Army attacking different German positions. He had studied the maps. He had calculated the logistics. He had war-gamed the timing. The German High Command, monitoring Allied radio traffic, considers Patton's Third Army the least of their worries. They know where Patton is, attacking toward the Saar. They know he's committed to that offensive. They know that armies don't pivot overnight. Their intelligence officers calculate that if Patton does attempt to relieve Bastogne, it will take at least 10 days. By then, Bastogne will have fallen, and the German armor will have pushed through to the Meuse River. December 19th, evening. Patton returns to his headquarters in Luxembourg and sets the machinery in motion. What follows is one of the most remarkable staff operations in military history. A symphony of logistics, communication, and willpower conducted under impossible conditions. Major General Hobart Gay, Patton's chief of staff, has already assembled the key players. Colonel Halley Maddox has road movement tables prepared. The G4 logistics section has fuel and ammunition movement schedules ready. The Signal Corps has communication plans drafted. Every officer in Third Army headquarters understands what's coming. They've been preparing for 3 days. The plan calls for 3 divisions, the 4th Armored, the 26th Infantry, and the 80th Infantry, to disengage from their current positions, pivot 90 degrees north, move up to 75 miles through snow and ice, and launch a coordinated attack into the German southern flank. This represents roughly 133,000 men when support units are included. Over 11,000 vehicles must traverse roads that are little more than frozen paths. But the challenge isn't just movement. These divisions are currently in combat. They're fighting German forces in front of them. You cannot simply tell men engaged with the enemy to turn around and leave. Each unit must be carefully extracted, replaced by holding forces, and withdrawn in sequence so the Germans don't realize what's happening and exploit the withdrawal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the German Bulge, the men of the 101st Airborne hunker down in frozen foxholes around Bastogne. They're low on ammunition. They're low on medical supplies. They're low on hope. German panzer units probe their perimeter constantly. The weather is so terrible that air resupply is impossible. But defiance doesn't stop artillery shells. It doesn't warm frozen feet. It doesn't bring reinforcements. The clock is ticking. December 20th, 0400 hours. The movement begins. In darkness and snow, American units start their pivot. The 4th Armored Division, under Major General Hugh Gaffey, leads the way. Behind them, 62 miles of vehicles begin threading through Luxembourg and southern Belgium. Tank columns, artillery tractors, supply trucks, command vehicles, ambulances, everything an army needs to fight. The coordination required is staggering. Different units are using different roads, all moving toward convergence points, all maintaining radio silence so German intelligence won't detect the movement. At crossroads throughout the region, military police direct traffic with flashlights, keeping the columns moving, preventing the gridlock that would doom the entire operation. Patton himself is everywhere. He moves between units, appearing at critical junctures, pushing commanders, solving problems in real time. When a bridge is found destroyed, engineers are already moving forward with bridging equipment because Patton's staff anticipated this. When fuel trucks can't get through clogged roads, Patton orders them to drive cross-country through fields. When a regimental commander suggests his men need rest, Patton's response is immediate and unprintable, but effective. The weather is brutal. Temperatures hover around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow falls steadily. The roads become sheets of ice. Vehicles slide off into ditches. Men march with their heads down against the wind, their uniforms crusted with ice. But they keep moving. The truth was far more complex than simple determination. Patton's Third Army had developed a logistics system that other armies envied. His quartermaster units had positioned fuel dumps forward. His ordnance companies had ammunition already moving north before the order was given. His signal corps had strung communication wire along multiple routes. Every piece had been positioned like a chess move, waiting for the moment to advance. German reconnaissance aircraft, when they can fly through the weather, report American movement. But German intelligence misinterprets it. They believe these are units withdrawing or repositioning defensively. They do not realize that an entire army is wheeling toward their southern flank like a sledgehammer. December 22nd, 0600 hours. Exactly 48 hours after Patton's promise to Eisenhower, the 4th Armored Division crashes into German positions south of Bastogne. The Germans are caught completely unprepared. They had expected at least another week before Patton could possibly arrive. Their defensive positions face the wrong direction. Their reserves are committed elsewhere. The attack isn't elegant. It's brutal, grinding combat through villages and forest paths. The 4th Armored splits into 3 columns, each probing for weak points in the German line. They're not trying to break through everywhere. They're looking for one path to Bastogne, one corridor they can hold open. Inside Bastogne, the defenders hear the artillery to the south. At first, they can't believe it. It's too soon. It can't be Patton. But the sound grows closer. American fighter bombers appear overhead as the weather briefly clears. They're hitting German positions in coordination with the ground attack. The relief force is real. It's coming. For 3 days, the 4th Armored hammers northward, village by village, kilometer by kilometer. The Germans fight savagely to keep the corridor closed. This is their last major offensive of the war, perhaps their last chance to change the outcome. They cannot allow it to fail, because one American general moved faster than physics should allow. December 26th, 1645 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, commanding the 37th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, leads his Shermans into the Bastogne perimeter. The siege is broken. Patton has delivered on his impossible promise, not in 48 hours, as he'd predicted the attack would begin, but the relief itself came in 7 days of brutal fighting after that lightning-fast repositioning. The meeting between Eisenhower and Patton, after the relief of Bastogne, is documented in multiple sources, including Eisenhower's own post-war writings and the accounts of staff officers present. Eisenhower's first words, according to his naval aide Commander Harry Butcher, were simple: "George, every time I get a new star, I get attacked." But the more significant moment came in private. Eisenhower, who had spent the war managing the massive egos and competing ambitions of Allied commanders, acknowledged what Patton had accomplished. According to Patton's diary, Eisenhower told him, "You've done more than anyone had a right to expect." From the German side, the reaction was even more revealing. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of the German forces in the West, was interrogated after the war about the Battle of the Bulge. When asked what went wrong, He pointed to one factor above all others. Patton's Third Army arrived a week before our intelligence said it was possible. The relief of Bastogne didn't just save 18,000 American soldiers. It marked the psychological turning point of the Battle of the Bulge. The Germans had bet everything on speed and surprise. When Patton moved faster than they could react, the entire offensive began to collapse. Within weeks, the German army would be in full retreat, never to launch another major offensive in the West. What Eisenhower recognized, what von Rundstedt acknowledged, was that Patton had accomplished something beyond tactical victory. He had demonstrated that leadership, preparation, and will could overcome what planning staffs called impossible. The Battle of the Bulge continued until late January 1945, becoming the largest and bloodiest battle fought by American forces in World War II. But its outcome was decided in those crucial days after Christmas, when Patton's relief column proved the German offensive could be stopped, could be contained, could be defeated. The Third Army's pivot became a case study in military staff colleges worldwide. The maneuver required moving 183,000 men and 11,000 vehicles across 75 miles of winter roads, then sustaining offensive operations for weeks afterward. Modern military analysts still study the logistics, the planning, and the execution. But perhaps the deeper lesson isn't about logistics at all. It's about the nature of leadership under pressure. Patton succeeded not because he was reckless, though his reputation suggested that, but because he had prepared for the unexpected. He had anticipated the crisis before it occurred. He had positioned his forces and his staff to respond with speed that appeared supernatural but was actually the product of meticulous planning. Eisenhower's acknowledgement mattered because it came from a man who understood the full scope of what had been accomplished. The Supreme Commander had to coordinate British, American, Canadian, and French forces across multiple fronts. He knew what was operationally possible and what wasn't. When he told Patton the movement was brilliant, he wasn't offering casual praise. He was recognizing something genuinely exceptional. The relief of Bastogne was only one chapter in Patton's final campaign. In our next video, we'll explore what happened when German High Command realized that stopping Patton's advance across the Rhine was becoming impossible, and what they said about the American general they had underestimated until it was too late. What was your reaction to learning how Patton accomplished this maneuver? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the most remarkable moments of military history. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.